Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our Career Booster webinar series, where today we will be talking about the skills inventory. So we're going to talk about best ways to highlight your skills on your resume to attract the attention of potential employers. Our objectives today is to communicate that you meet the employer's criteria and expectations when applying for jobs. We're going to learn the difference between hard and soft skills when preparing your resume and understand the difference between those. And then we're just going to understand how to write an attractive skills section that's going to grab the attention of potential employers. My name is Jeremy Bell, Career Services Manager here at Grantham University, and I want to officially welcome you today. And joining me, we have Doug Dimler. Hello. Career Services Coordinator here at Grantham University and co-advisor of the GU SHRM Student Chapter. And also joining us, our special guest, we have Brandon McCauley.
Hello.
Brandon McCauley is our Human Resources Business Partner here at Grantham University, and so he sees a lot of applicants come his way, so he's going to be able to provide some great insight as to what to do to gain the attention of prospective recruiters. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is understanding the importance of doing your homework when applying for new positions. So, whether you're going to Indeed or if you're going to a company website or if you're going to Monster or what have you, it's really important to understand the position that you're applying for and tailor your resume to that specific job. I think a lot of times we'll get into the habit of creating that one great resume, and then we send it out to everyone, or the spray and pray method that we call, where we just send that out to a lot of different opportunities and want to see what sticks. But really what's important is to make sure that you're really speaking to that specific job opportunity. So there's going to be a lot of research that you want to do to understand particular language of the company, particular keywords that are going to be highlighted. It's really important that you align your skill set to that company's expectation. In addition, you want to understand that company's culture and their values and understand how you can potentially fit into that environment. So I'll turn it over to Doug to see, would you have any additional insight to that?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at it sounds like a lot of time. When you're looking at doing a job search and tailoring your resume to each specific job posting, it seems like it's a lot of time, but actually on the long run, it's not. Because if you just send out the same resume to everybody and then try to manage all of that, it actually takes more time and you lose a lot in the long run. So if you can tailor each resume to each job position and do the work, the homework now, it's going to be actually time saving in the long run, and you're going to be better organized.
Cool. Brandon, any thoughts on that from the HR perspective?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think what Doug said is exactly right. I mean, you want to tailor this thing to your unique skills. I mean, everyone will have similarities on their resumes when it comes to hard skills, and we'll talk about hard versus soft skills later, but there's certain things that are unique to you, and I think that's important that you stand out that way.
Definitely. Awesome. And I want to, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I did want to let you know that if you have any questions throughout today's presentation, there is a question or Q&A feature built within the Zoom software that you've added here. So if you have any questions, be sure to ask those, and we'll make sure that we address those before the end of the presentation. And if not, we can definitely connect with you at a later time to answer any questions that you have as well. So moving on, we're going to talk about qualifications, and I'm going to turn things over to Brandon to talk about how you can best prove that you're qualified for those positions.
Yeah, so when you apply for a position, obviously you see a job posting. That's initially where you start. And you say to yourself, well, hey, I'm, maybe interested in this position. And so, the first thing you see obviously is the job title, or maybe you search for a certain industry or certain field, in a job, on a job board. But it's important to know that each job has been created with a job description, and that's where the job posting comes from. So, and that job was created by a hiring manager or HR or someone at that employer that knows specifically what they're looking for. So Um, don't just rely on the job title when you're applying for the job. Look over the job posting really thoroughly, because that's really where you're going to see if you're really qualified or not. And if you don't see roughly anywhere from 75 to 80% that you qualify for that job based on what you've done and what's on your resume, then there's really not much use in applying. So I'd say that's probably the main thing, is really do your research, really thoroughly look at those job descriptions, not just the job titles.
Yeah, and I think the thing I would add to that would be, and to Brandon's point, if you're reviewing the job and maybe you realize, okay, maybe I have less than 75% or even less than 50% of the qualifications. However, if that's a position or a career that you want to see yourself in the future, it's definitely a good idea to do the research again on those, so what the qualifications and the skills are for the people or even the jobs that are that you're targeting. LinkedIn is a great way to do that. When if you have a specific title in mind, let's say, for example, if you want to go into HR, like Brandon, or even career services like Doug and myself, but you haven't done that before, go on LinkedIn, look for people who are doing the type of job that you want to do and see what kind of skills that they're bringing to the table. That's going to give you a really good representation of, what you need to strive for moving forward if you have not yet met those required qualifications. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, and I think, Doug, you could have some good insight on this, is the applicant tracking system. Because I know a lot of companies of various sizes will use some sort of applicant tracking system when sourcing candidates for specific jobs. And there's some specific things that that you want to keep in mind to do that. Can you provide some insight to the applicant tracking system?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the applicant tracking system is two companies can buy the same applicant tracking system, but the way they program or use the algorithms within the applicant tracking system can be different. So two companies will want two different things, even though they purchase the applicant tracking system from the same company. So no two applicant tracking systems are alike. So those keywords are very, very important, and where you find those keywords is in the job posting. And definitely there's software out there, free Google search, or a Google search will give you free, you plug in the job requirements and the position duties, and you can get keywords that way. You can ask us, of course, here in the Career Services Department. But those keywords are become very important if you find out if you're qualified. And we have students that ask all the time, are you qualified? And to your point, Jeremy, that I think when you are looking for an HR manager, what does that mean for one company as opposed to another company? So there could be two different things, and looking at those qualifications for a specific position is really about those keywords. Do you qualify? Is it something that you can do? And I like what you said about, well, I may not qualify now, but this might be a career choice for me moving forward. Mm-hmm. Maybe I take that position that's underneath that and then move up to that. So I thought that was a very good point about maybe a career path if you're talking about that, because we get that all the time. Students ask about that all the time. What is my next step? What's my next step after this or that, the other thing? So doing those searches and really looking at the qualifications compared to what you have on your resume is going to be perfect for looking at career path.
Yeah, that's good. And, the only other thing I would add to that, is that most jobs will have some specific core competencies that they're looking for. If you're in IT, there's going to be specific programming languages that you need to know. If you're in HR, there's going to be specific, core competencies there. Could be everything from benefits and compensation to employee relations to, maybe even a psychology requirement or things of that nature. But those things they're going to be pretty common. So there are going to be some things that should be real easy for you to find. So we're going to keep things going here and talk a little bit more about the skills section. What is the skills section?
Yeah, the skills section is mainly, it makes it easy for your qualifications for others to see. Maybe it's a recruiter or hiring manager or an HR person. But those key skills, like if we look here at the sales manager, these are these skills are what's really important, and they should match to what the requirements are or the duties are for the posted position. When a recruiter looks at, well, even anybody that really looks at a resume, it's less than 10 seconds they need to catch a picture of what you can and cannot do. So in this section, it's really good to make sure that the key qualifications match up to what you do. And that's the key point here, is make sure those key skills that you have, you've done in your experience. If you haven't, it kind of falls by the wayside. So if you haven't done any global marketing expansion strategies, you think you can do that, that's not a skill that you need to add. It's a skill you need to leave off. Make sure these skills of what you've done, and you can prove that in your resume.
Good point. So we're going to continue talking a little bit more about the keywords within your section. Is there any additional information as far as keyword specific that that applicants should know when preparing their resume?
Yeah, and even though we're looking at a technical area here, and with technical areas, it's easy. I mean, there's languages or software that can be put up here. But if you're looking for, anything in business or business analyst, there are still skills that you have that are learned over time. So anything that you've learned over time and you've taken either a certificate or a course, or you can speak to it almost like a language that you know how to write and read, your skills speak to that. So when you put your skills down, you need to know how to write, read, and talk about those skills. Like I said, this is more of a technical skill. So mainly keeping this, this may be too much. So if, let's say, Oracle or Server 2008 isn't what the job posting asks for, you should leave it off. The Access or SQL, things like that, if it's not on there, again, leave it off. Applicants always think they need all the information that they have when simply the job posting didn't ask for it, so you should leave that off.
Yeah. To Doug's point, to give another example or a couple more examples of this, and I know this is a little bit more of a technical example, but another thing I could think of would be project management. I think project management is something that we have seen a lot of students over time want to get into, but that is a core competency that, that could be seen across many different professions. There are project managers out there, their title is project manager, but project management is something that you could see in any type of job. So to Doug's point, let's say it may not be natural language processing, but if you have project management as one of your core competencies, you should be able to speak to that in your resume as to how I have used project management, from start to finish. How did you evaluate the project? How did you start and execute? And how did you even, who did you work with as far as how you got this project done? There's a lot of elements to that, and that should be seen in the resume. Another example, even more simple example, could be customer service. So if you say, one of my skills is customer service, that resume should speak to that. It may not even be, I was in a customer service representative role. It could be your internal customer service. How well did I work with my peers within my organization? And if I've been asked to do certain things by, my coworkers or my boss or, other constituents that I work with, how well did you execute that? And how well was your job received by the folks around you, either customers outside the company or even those internal people inside. So regardless of what those actual skills are, I would, reiterate, what Doug said is you should be able to explain it. So, the key is, again, never list anything on your resume that you feel is what they want to hear. You have to be able to back up every single skill that you list on your resume. And just to kind of reiterate a few other points that we listed here, again, the applicant tracking system, just to, add a little more information to that, it's one of those things, again, and I feel like we might harp on it, but really understanding the position is so important, because a lot of those companies, those keywords, they're going to list them in the resume. So, or on the job posting. So it's very important that your resume include those words. So if someone says, we're looking for someone with specific customer service experience, customer service needs to be listed on your resume specifically so they see it and it picks it up. Because in a lot of cases, if it doesn't, you may not get to the next round. I know federal opportunities, specifically if you're applying for things on USA Jobs, federal applications can be even more specific. So, if that information isn't precisely what they're looking for in some cases, it may your application may never reach a human hand if it doesn't make it past that applicant tracking system. So definitely pay close attention to what those postings are asking, and use them, because as you see here, they are present, because companies, regardless of the industry, they're telling you exactly what they want to know in the job.
Yeah, so let's say that you're applying for a position where they have an upwards of 100, 200, maybe 1,000 applicants. The only way to get through that is through an applicant tracking system. And how are you going to know all the things that it looks for? You don't. So mainly, the things that you look for are keywords. You have to put in those keywords. Even things like too much capitalization. If there's shading in the resume, it could throw off an applicant tracking system. And what I mean by throwing off, it could simply not read that section, and that could even count as not even being a section that is readable, so it'll go into a no pile. If you put your contact information in a up at the top and it's hidden in an area that can be repeated in the second page, applicant tracking systems cannot see that. So I don't know all the exact ones, because like I said before, applicant tracking systems are different from company to company, and how they program those or use the algorithms to seek those keywords can be different from almost even each position. Even a hiring manager can go in there and change what they're looking for in a particular area. So really, it's just mainly get your keywords down, knowing how the keywords, how you can look for the keywords, do they match up to your qualifications, and just go from there. So, but again, we're here for you to look at that, and the resumes that I rewrite for our students should go through most of the applicant tracking systems, not all of them, but for most of them, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I was going to mention that, as I know, what we're talking about today is really a high-level overview of how to develop your skills section on your resume. But definitely, we invite you to reach out to us directly, and we can walk you through this as those opportunities come up. So moving forward, so skills to include on your resume, and this is one of those things that you can break down quite simply as you want to present skills that the company is looking for. So if they list specific qualifications, you definitely want to make sure that those skills are listed in your resume. But you also want to show you want to show your value while doing so. You want to show the value that you've added for the company or companies that you've worked for up to this point, and you also want to show how you're going to bring that value to the company that you're potentially moving into. And we listed here some pretty simple ways that you can do that, and they may not apply to everyone, but they're definitely going to apply in some way depending on the opportunity. So you want to know, if you've had the opportunity to increase revenue, maybe through, sales or business development, you definitely want to show that. If you were able to improve processes that either saved time for the organization or made things more efficient, if you solved a major problem for an organization, and it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It could be something as simple as, we decided to send files, through one system instead of another. We went to a paperless billing instead of doing things all by hand, and it saved us time and money. Those are things that employers are looking for, because overall, if you could do anything that improves the livelihood of the company, both internally and externally, those are going to be some good things to add to your resume. Brandon, do you have any additional thoughts on that as far as what to include or what not to include on your resume?
Yeah, I think it's the things that make you specifically unique to that job, what you specifically bring. We'll talk about soft skills and hard skills in a second, but like Jeremy just said, there's going to be things that you have experience with in former, you know, jobs that you've had formerly, and they're going to have certain things that you've done that other people maybe didn't have the experience in. So, like saving time, saving money. Well, how did you do that? At your former job, how were you able to accomplish that? Because when employers look on a resume, let's just pretend we're applying for an HR job, and you list on a resume, well, I did employee relations. I have experience with employee relations. Well, how many other HR folks probably have experience with employee relations? Probably several of them. If it's a generalist position or an HR manager position, almost all of them. So the employer will see that on virtually everyone's resume. But if you get specific and you tell exactly how you were able to effectively, conduct employee relations successfully, that's going to be your unique. It's going to be unique to your resume, and that's really what's going to make your resume yours.
That's good. Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is while you're doing that and while you're, showing those examples, if you can quantify that information, that makes it even better. So if you've increased, revenue or sales, maybe you increased it by, $5,000 over the previous year, or maybe you cut our expenditures by a few thousand or even a few $100,000. Those are good things that you want to mention. Or even if you managed a budget of a specific amount, something that we see typically with military resumes. Let's say someone works in inventory, you could be responsible for an inventory of millions of dollars with very little room for error. So those are things that you definitely want to include. So you definitely want to show how you added value, but if you can quantify that, that makes it even better. So moving forward, and then as Brandon mentioned, we're going to talk about the difference between hard skills versus soft skills. So Brandon, tell us a little bit about soft skills and just what are those?
Sure. So soft skills it's basically a name given to the capabilities that are naturally present in you as a person. Some are developed, but a lot of times these soft skills are hard to learn. It's something that you have as an individual. So they can be developed through relationships, through experience. They're your basic personal attributes. They're not the technical side. The hard skills are kind of the opposite of that. They're the actual substantial technical skills that you pertain. So I would say, it's very important to include both hard skills and soft skills on your resume, especially in the skill inventory. I would argue that hard skills are useless without soft skills. Hard skills may look impressive on your resume, but like we talked about before, the uniqueness, what makes you stand out as a candidate, they're really the soft skills. That's really going to set you apart from any other candidate. So another thing that's going to be important with your soft skills is that you have experiences, stories, examples to back them up. Once you get into the actual interview process, whether it be a phone interview or an in-face or a face interview, you're going to want to back up why you put those soft skills down. And some may be apparent just through the actual process, the application process in general. If you say you're organized or you have attention to detail, yet your resume has a plethora of mistakes on it, then all that skill, might be out the window. So it's very important that you're honest, just like with your hard skills, and we talked about this before. You're honest with your soft skills. Have examples, have stories, but use that as an opportunity to have you stand out compared to all other candidates.
Yeah, I think that's definitely good, and I think it also ties back into what we were talking about as far as company culture, and because I think employers are definitely looking for people who can do the job, that have capabilities to do the job at hand, regardless of the industry or what have you. But I think just as importantly these days is employers want people that are going to fit into that company's culture. So if you're a company, and you'll see that a lot of these descriptions, in job descriptions, we want people who are motivated. We want people who can manage their time effectively. We want people who are flexible and adaptable, and we want people who, who can work, in a team environment. But we also want people who maybe have they're people who have a culture of service, or volunteerism, or someone who really is compassionate about what they do. So if those are capability, or those are attributes that you have, attributes or soft skills, I would agree that they are just as important to include within your resume. Doug, any additional thoughts as far as soft skills are concerned?
Well, I agree with Brandon. You can have as many soft skills, or you can have as many hard skills as possible, but if you don't have the soft skills to be able to implement those hard skills, it's going to be really hard for an employer to see how you're going to fit it into a team and how you're going to implement different strategies. So yeah, I definitely agree with Brandon on that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, while we're talking to you, Doug, tell us a little bit about hard skills.
Yeah, so hard skills are it could be more technical skills or accumulated abilities across the board, but really it's a development through on-the-job training or certifications that you've acquired. Do you have any specific computing abilities, or maybe even specific abilities? Have you taken a course for those hard skills? Anything that's learned, a language that's learned. It could be a foreign language. A lot of times you're seeing more often now that there's looking for bilingual, or it's a specific computer science programming language that you've learned, or is it programming that you've taken a certificate for? Did you get a degree in that? Those things are the hard skills. Those are the things that they're looking for, that are in the requirements, or maybe even the wanted qualifications. But those are the hard things that you've learned and really have learned with proficiency. But again, we come back to the soft skills. How do you explain how you've learned that? How do you explain how those hard skills that you've learned? How do you implement those? Those are the main things. You can have, like I said, you can have all the hard skills that you can possibly get, but without having those soft skills to explain how you've done that and you fit into a company culture is huge. But those hard skills are still important, especially in the technical field, engineering field, and some of your nursing and allied health fields. So.
Yeah, and I think those are the things that you definitely want to identify, as soon as possible, even in your cover letter or even in your introduction. As Doug mentioned, there are going to be specific things that are a definite. They're an absolute for some positions. Some companies may say, we want someone with a bachelor's degree in accounting. Either you've got that degree or you don't, but if you do, that's one thing you can check off your list. If you know these computer languages, okay, I can check SQL Server, C++, all those things off, or even, things like, that Brandon does, if you've got the employee relations background, or even HRS systems or recruiting, what have you, you can, check them off the list. They're just hard and fast things that we know we have to have. But to your point, those, how you execute it is going to be just as importantly, how did you use those? So, you're going to need to explain it on your resume, and you're also going to need to explain it in your interview. So, those are important things to consider. So yeah. So some things to leave off your resume. So we talked about a lot of the things that you want to make sure that you include, that definitely, and it really comes down to making sure that you're matching your experience to the employer's criteria. But there are also some things that you want to leave off. I know we've seen, a lot of resumes come across our desk that can be pretty full of what we call fluff, things that, just aren't necessary. And we list, and you can see if you're watching on your laptop or your smartphone, you can see some of the examples we gave here, which would include things like typing or Microsoft Office or data entry or, certain outdated coding languages. And for some of these, they're a given, for once you reach a certain point in your education or your work experience, certain skills like typing are kind of a given. Not a lot of jobs are going to ask for specific typing skills unless you're going into maybe a clerical or even a data entry type position. So it's really not necessary to list your typing skills. It might be impressive that you can type 65 words a minute, but it might not be important to the employer. So unless they ask for it specifically, let's say specifically want to know how fast you can type, I would leave it off your resume. The same thing goes with Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office is one of those things that most people know how to use. It's, and a lot of times, employers really only require that you have, the basic level of Microsoft Office. A lot of folks aren't going to request, real advanced experience in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, but again, if it's something that they specifically ask for in the job posting, you may want to list it. Other than that, I would omit it. I mentioned hobbies here because, we have seen that from time to time where someone might mention, I'm into photography or I'm into archery or what have you. And that's fine and great, and that might be something that, you can bring up to break the ice in the interview, but it's not necessary for the resume. It's, there's other valuable things that you could put on that. But some of the other things we mentioned here, I mentioned data entry. It's one of those things that, it is, it can be seen as an entry level kind of qualification, and unless it's specifically mentioned on the job posting itself, it's not really necessary. And I talked about, I mentioned outdated coding languages. The reason why I listed this here is, we gave that example earlier in the presentation of a lot of the different technical qualifications and certifications that you might have in certain industries. Some of them may be on the forefront, some of them may be a little bit outdated, but you might want to be cautious in what to include. And Doug, you work with a lot of students in engineering and computer science. What would you say as far as listing technology, current and former, on your resume?
Well, definitely outdated languages that can date you. Mm-hmm. And with especially technology, it's all about the latest and the greatest that you have, whether it's the hard skills of learning and getting a certificate in, but anything that you list that's too old could date you, or just by putting that down, a hiring manager can assume that you're no longer up to the current standards that they need, and that will disqualify you for it. And you definitely don't want to do that. That's a huge mistake that I see a lot of technical resumes have.
Gotcha. Yeah. So really just, keep it to the point, keep it relevant. I think relevancy is the key word for, when you're thinking of your skills. You want to make sure you're as relevant to the opportunity as possible, and that you're not wasting valuable real estate on your resume on things that will not be important to the employer. Because as Doug, and Brandon both mentioned, that you have a very limited amount of time to make an impression on the employer, and you want to keep it to the point, and you don't want to potentially lose them by, adding information that may not be important to them. So we want to keep it relevant. So the last thing we're going to cover, and Doug, you're going to give us some final tips to remember when creating your skills section for your resume.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about skills on your resume, and only have those job specific skills that is on the job posting. Really important to look at those. Only list what your applicable skills are. Again, look at what they're looking for. If you have those skills, list them. If you have those skills and they're not listed, definitely put those on there. Organize your skills in the categories. Sometimes explaining something into a category or each specific category can help you out. How do you with your organization, communication, your
time management.
Your time management. How do you deal with those, and break those skills down into each one of those categories? Or there are other categories that definitely we can help you out. And we talked about, JB just talked about relevant information on your resume. Everything has to be relevant. You could say Facebook marketing, but do you know what that really means? Or Pinterest marketing. Do we really know what that means when you're talking about a social media person? Do you really know what that means? Do you know what those specific search engines mean in terms of internet marketing or social media marketing? If you don't,
is there a better way to describe it? Like
Yeah.
if you're, I think by synonyms, it's like, okay, social media marketing might mean something different than Facebook marketing.
Right.
So it might be the way you're saying it. It might mean one thing to you, but that employer might define it completely different than someone else.
And again, it's all how the employer defines it in that job posting, and they'll tell you if it's a basic general job posting, then you pick and choose what you think get on what you think that is. Get on their website and see what really is important to them, and they'll tell you on the website, on most company websites, what's really important to them. If it's about technology, then you'll want to tell them how you're more technically savvy. If it's more of a mission-based company, and they'll tell you that, we volunteered here, we've reported on a lot of these different social aspects, then you want to put more of that if you have that experience in there. So whatever's relevant, you want to do your homework, like we said right from the top of this webinar. Do that homework is so important. And Jeremy mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a fantastic way to look at those employees at that specific company. Find out what they're saying in their job description. You can easily tell whether it's more of a technical company or more of a mission-based driven company just by the descriptions of the employees, of themselves, and of their jobs. So LinkedIn's a fantastic way to really help you out.
And the last point on here was to list your important skills a few times.
That's right.
And I just wanted to make sure we covered that, because when you look at a resume, it's definitely you definitely want to list those either at the the top. We typically will have a core competencies section right after your professional summary. But we've said it before, you want to make sure that all that information is described within your description. So we're going to have another one of these webinars later on in December that talks about your work experience section, but that's really the core. So you've kind of gotten them, you whet their appetite with your skills section, but it's really important to make sure that you continue to mention those skills throughout your resume.
Is that your teaser for the next webinar?
That's my teaser for the next webinar. So we're coming back in December, but that really is the case, because as you're going through the resume, you want to give them a reason to keep reading your resume. The cover letter, is definitely going to show them that you are qualified. As I mentioned before, there's going to be some basic things, core things that they want to make sure that you have. One of them could be, we want someone with a degree in a certain area. We want you to have a certain number of years of experience in another, and that's going to be the second qualification. And then, maybe even mentioning, some of those personal traits or some of those specific skill sets that we're looking for. So you can do that in your cover letter or even in your introduction. So you've introduced yourself. You've already kind of gotten their attention by saying, okay, I've got these basic qualifications. Then when you get into your skills, you're really going to break down even more, just how well you match up to what they're looking for. But then once you get into the work experience, you need to reiterate, again, this is how I've managed my time. This is how I've managed these projects. This is how I've saved my company money. This is how I've done all the things I've said I was able to do at the top of my resume. So, don't just put a skills section in your resume and call it a day. You want to keep reiterating that I am the man or woman for this job. So, okay. So to close things out, I just want to kind of turn things back over to Brandon. Brandon, as our resident HR professional, any final words of wisdom for our folks who are looking at creating their resumes and and tackling some upcoming job opportunities?
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit about applicant tracking systems and how different they could be at different companies. I just wanted to really briefly give an idea of what our applicant tracking system looks like here at Grantham University. And we can do so many different things with this tool, and obviously we don't use everything, but I'll just tell you, when we create a job, we go through the job description and we choose those keywords, or we work with the hiring managers who are looking for the candidates with those keywords. And we list those in a section of this job or tracking system. And all of a sudden, when people submit their resume, the system goes through the resume and it picks out the words that we've put on the job posting and what we've considered our keywords for this position. And it matches and it comes up with an actual percentage number. And that percentage number moves your resume to the top if your percentage is higher. So if it's a 90% match, it's going to be a lot higher than a 50% match. So that kind of just shows you how important it is to do your homework and look at the job descriptions, what we've talked about throughout this actual webinar, because it is, when we have 200, 300 resumes to go through, there's got to be some guidelines and some tools that are used to kind of, bring that to the top, the resumes to the top, and that's kind of how it works here. So I just wanted to give a little insight on that.
Cool. And that is the key. You want your resume to be at the top. Like we want at least 75% match in qualifications. And the other thing I was going to mention is that there is software out there to help you make sure that you're matching up with the qualifications. One thing that we've used here, it's called JobScan. And if you search, just do a Google search for JobScan, it is a great service that you can use, and it is a free service. I think you can do up to 25 free scans on the system, and it'll even evaluate your LinkedIn profile as well to see how well you're matching up with those potential opportunities. So basically, all you do is you will copy and paste your resume, and then you'll also copy and paste the job description, and it'll, as Brandon mentioned, with it, it's similar to the ATS, where it will give you a breakdown of, where you're hitting the points and where you're missing the mark. So that's another really cool tool to check out to see how well, your resume and, your skills and experience are matching up with what employers are expecting. And again, we definitely welcome you to reach out to us here at Grantham Career Services. On the screen, you've got our phone number and our email address. And I wanted to let you know about Career Launch, which is a really great program that we developed here. It's a comprehensive self-paced program that we built in Blackboard. For those of you who are Grantham students or even alumni who are familiar with Blackboard, it's really cool to use. It's got all the tools that you can need, from creating your resume to understanding more about the interview process, even information on managing your social media presence during the job search process, and even negotiating your salary, and a lot more. So it's a really great program. It's free to all students and alumni. We welcome you to sign up for that. There's no deadlines or things that you need to follow to complete it. You can complete it in your own time, and we're here to help guide you through the process as well. You can reach out to Doug or myself, and we'd be glad to work with you. And we also invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn group. It's GU Alumni Connections, and it is a great way to connect with fellow Grantham students and alumni, as well as potential recruiters. We post great information on a daily basis, so it's definitely a cool resource to check out. But yeah, I think, Doug, any additional points you'd like to add today?
Well, no, we're harping on the resume or the applicant tracking system, but you can have, you can know all about applicant tracking systems or not know, but really, if your resume isn't what it's supposed to be, then it's never going to get through to a human being. So that's what we ultimately want to do. That's our ultimate goal, is to make sure you get that interview. Now, past that, we can help you out with interviewing skills, and of course, Career Launch is a great resource for that. But we'll guide you through the whole way with Career Launch.
Awesome. Well, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we definitely appreciate you guys joining us today. I want to thank Doug Dimler, our Career Services Coordinator, and I also want to thank Brandon McCauley, our HR business partner here at Grantham, for joining us today. There's some really great information shared, and we look forward to connecting with you guys again next month when we talk about work experience. But we hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again soon.